to the Truth in My Days podcast, where we defend the Word of God against the challenges of men.
Hi, I'm Dana Torst, and welcome to another episode of the Truth in My Days radio program. Today, I'm here with John Torst and Jason Chan as they discuss the important topic of creation and evolution. We are continuing from the previous episode. We hope you enjoy.
Now, remember the argument from homology, where they say that, oh, look, the fact that the bones in limbs are so similar is proof for evolution. Mm-hmm. Now, since the panda's bones are different from a primate's bones, they say, look, it's different. That's proof for evolution. What do you think from that?
Looks like they're just trying to pull things out of thin air to make some sort of excuse for why their previous explanation didn't make sense.
Yeah. And this is a general rule, like any kind of theory or claim where diametrically opposed observations both supposedly support the theory, you know the theory is fake. Mm-hmm. And you see this actually in evolution all the time. For example, if you look at a particular woodland and you have different types of birds there, and some birds are very brightly colored, some are very drab, brownish, fading into the background. Well, why are these birds drab? Well, it's the best way to survive this environment. They can blend in with the background, makes it harder for predators to spot them. That's the best kind of adaptation to this environment. Why are these other birds brightly colored? Well, it's sexual selection, you see. Females like brightly colored birds, and so this helps them to reproduce. Now, you might possibly get away with this if the drab birds were in one woodland and the colored in a different woodland, but in the same environment. How can the exact opposite conditions both be the best for surviving in that environment? It absolutely cannot. So what you see here in evolution is these just so stories where they essentially look at the phenomena and then they make up an explanation that supposedly fits into the evolutionary model, but you see they end up contradicting themselves right and left again and again and again. And at this point, we could probably say something about the sexual selection, which they now claim is a big driving force for evolution. If you have a blue bird, well, the females like the bluebirds, the bright color attracts them, so they get a better chance to mate and pass on their DNA. Mm-hmm. And you stop and think, so this was an evolutionary adaptation? How did that happen? Think about it. Try to trace this through in your imagination. Okay, say all the birds are drab color, and then one gets a genetic mutation and becomes blue.
Right. It would have become like the ugly duckling.
It would become like the ugly duckling, except the ugly duckling turned out to be an actual swan, which is a good thing. Never mind the fact that you can't get a genetic mutation to make birds blue, but let's pretend you can. What would happen then? You got a worldwide population of, say, 100 million of these birds, and now you suddenly have one blue male. Now, the females mate with the males, so they mate with the drab-colored males. Why would they suddenly, oh, look, that one's blue. We like him better. Why would that happen? Just imagine if suddenly like one person came out like blue-skinned. Would we find that more attractive than normal humans? I don't think so. Yeah. So you would have to have some kind of genetic mutation to make a female like a bluebird better than a normal bird. What are the chances that these happen at the same time? And if the birds are spread all over the planet, what are the chances that they happen to be in the same locale where the one that likes bluebirds will actually see a bluebird?
Right. Very, very unlikely.
Yes. What will either happen is the female that evolved the traits to be attracted to blue birds will not mate with regular birds. She dies. The genetic trait is lost. The mutation is lost. The blue bird, well, all the female birds in his area, the drab female birds, are scared of him. They don't want to mate with him. And so the poor bluebird dies without ever passing on his DNA and his genetic mutation. That dies out. This is what would happen in real life. But what happens, they look at the fauna, they look, oh yeah, we have all these blue birds, and then we invent a fairy tale that sexual selection, female birds like bluebirds. No evidence, and when you actually try to reconstruct how this would have happened, you see it becomes absolutely ridiculous. And again, why would they hold to such ridiculous ideas? Because as we've said before, the one purpose of the theory of evolution from the beginning was to drive God out. That's the goal. And so they're going to hold on to the theory that they think allows them to do that, no matter what the facts, the evidence, the actual science says. But then they control the journals, the magazines, the schools, and so most people don't hear these facts. Mm-hmm. And they're told evolution is true and it's scientific, and you don't think about it, and you just accept it. And this is why it's important for the church to get these facts out to the general public so that they will not be fooled by this kind of thing. So that's pretty much, I would think, a rather comprehensive demolition of the theory of evolution.
Definitely.
Are there any points we have not yet touched on that you would like to touch on? Or anything that you might have encountered that we didn't think to cover yet? Any kind of proof offered?
Not necessarily a proof for evolution, but one question that I have heard before and I have wondered as well is a bit of a side question, but how did so many animals fit in Noah's Ark if this was a true retelling of historical events?
It actually wasn't as difficult as people think. Mm-hmm. People think that when Noah had to take the animals on board the ark, he had to take one pair or 7 pairs of all of the species. Mm-hmm. And they look at how many species of animals we have today and say, wow, millions. How could he possibly get them all on the ark? What we overlook is most of the species actually developed, as we talked, by selective breeding. Remember, you take the original population, you isolate it,
yep,
and by breeding within the subgroup that was only part of the genetic data, certain traits come to the fore and others are lost.
Right.
And so what that means then is, in Noah's day, he didn't have to take species. The Bible refers to kinds. Mm-hmm. God created all animals according to their kind. Where does the kind fit on this phylogenetic tree? It's not at the species level. Species develop later. Mm-hmm. We looked at that picture, for example, of the dogs, and genetic studies have shown that all of the dog kinds, dog types,
right,
today, wolves, foxes, domestic dogs, and so on, all these many different species all developed from one original dog kind, which would have looked sort of like a wolf. Mm-hmm. So Noah wouldn't have had to take 2 or 7 pairs of each of foxes and jackals and domestic dogs and so on. You would have had to take only that original dog kind.
Okay.
What does it correspond to? Does it correspond to the genus level? Possibly the family? We don't know. In different cases, it might be different levels.
Okay.
But for sure, there would not have been nearly so many at the time. And then he also has to take only land animals. Anything that lives in the sea, and so many of our species, so many of our kinds live in the sea, would not have to take them on board.
Right.
So there was only certain categories of animals that he had to take on the board. So then the question becomes, how many did he have to take? Is this feasible? So there would not have had to be nearly as many animals on board as people think. Ernst Mayr, a famous scientist, a leading American taxonomist, that means expert in classifying types of animals into the different groups, he was not a Christian, he was not a creationist. But based on the accounts in the Bible, he estimated that of the land animals, there would be 3,500 different kinds of mammals that would need to be represented, 8,600 bird kinds, 5,500 reptile kinds, for a total of 17,600. Assuming that half are clean, which means you'd need 7 animals, and half of them would be unclean, 2 needed. He calculates that you would need 79,200 animals. That's how many Noah would have had to carry on the ark. He went on then to assume that the average size of an animal is equal to a sheep, because he finds that's about midway in the animal kingdom of the species we're looking at.
Okay.
And he knows, he looks it up, a standard 2-deck stock car can carry 240 sheep. So 79,200 animals divided by 240 means that if you had 330 stock cars, railroad cars, that could carry all the animals on the ark. Now he calculated the volume, the interior volume of the ark from the measurements given in the Bible, 300 cubits by 50 cubits by 30 cubits. Assuming a cubit is 20 inches, he came up with 2,083,000 cubic feet, which would be the equivalent of the volume of 777 standard stock railroad cars.
I see.
So the ark held the equivalent volume to 777 stock cars. You would only need 330 to carry all the animals, which means 43% of the ark volume was empty when the flood came.
Okay.
Now, we can draw some interesting lessons from that. Obviously, Noah had to have space for food, to store food for them, perhaps waste collection and so on. So there was space, but there was also space for other people if they'd wanted to go on. And for 120 years while Noah's building the ark, he is a preacher of righteousness. He is warning the people. Anyone who'd listen could have come. There was room on the ark for them, but nobody did. Nobody listened to God's warning. And so when the flood came, the ark took off. With, unfortunately, a lot of room left over for people who just refused to come. So Mayer's analysis is written up in a book called The Scientific Analysis of Genesis, written by Edward F. Blick, a PhD. I believe it's in engineering as well. Okay. Now, if you want a full detailed analysis of the feasibility of Noah's Ark, I recommend to you a book called Noah's Ark, a Feasibility Study by John Woodmorick. It's a large book, and it covers every conceivable thing, including what do you do with the waste disposal, how much food would be needed, space requirements, heating, heat transfer, what the animals would have eaten after the ark landed, and so on. Everything is covered there.
Okay.
And you find from a purely scientific point of view, it is very, very much viable.
Okay.
So I'm happy to answer that question you've had all this time.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but please join us for the next part tomorrow. Same time and same place. If you enjoy our content and think this is important material, the best compliment you can pay is by sharing this with your friends and family. This helps us out a lot. Also, if you enjoyed today's program, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening to the Truth in My Days podcast with John Torse. We would love to hear from you. Please feel free to share any questions or comments you may have. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, and YouTube. Simply search Truth in My Days as one word. Again, Truth in My Days as one word, no spaces in between. And you can connect with us. You may also visit our website for more comprehensive material and to learn more about our ministry. Our website is truthinmydays.com. Thank you.